What is going on, everybody? Happy, what day is it? Friday. I'm in Boston. I'm on the road here, as you can see with my unusual background. Not the same thing you guys are used to seeing. Sheets just got back from his trip. And we're back and we're ready to go. Chan's been up and running with the LOL stuff, and soccer's just starting, so that could be fun too. And yeah, ready to talk a little bit of baseball. It's a monster slate with a lot of chalk in one area. Sheets, how are you doing? How was your trip? And what are your thoughts on sort of the slate from an overall perspective?
Yeah, trip was good. It was really, really hot there. And, we were talking pre-show. We never really talked about the slate pre-show, but Bobby was updating me that he wasn't able to go really out too much yesterday because actually Boston, they had to close apparently some of the restaurants because it was just too freaking hot out. And he gave a little tease. He was saying that that's going to impact the slate somewhat. So I'm kind of so with that's the only pre-input I've gotten. I didn't watch his picks yet. I always do that afterwards. I don't want to be predisposed before we go into this. But obviously before I make my actual lineups, I'm gonna certainly look at all that. So let's so I guess that's the theme, is gonna be heat. Is that the story?
It's hot, it's humid, and there should be some wind. Are you able to hear me all right? Because a little bit is, I'm in a new internet thing. It was working great for me, but it's just a little hiccupy. All good to go? Okay.
Yep.
Let's do it then. Let's go game by game. Why don't you pull up your screen and we'll start talking game by game. But I do think that from an overall thing, you're going to see massive chalk on Boston today on a big slate in general. Obviously, something as tournament players we try to stay away from. I still probably will get exposure in the high buy and smaller field stuff. And I probably will have even little pieces of it elsewhere just because I really like the spot for Boston today. So
I guess since you gave a full slate overview, I'll give a little something. I mean, the one thing I noticed is that I didn't even see it that way. I had actually 4 teams that became my 4 favorite hitting teams. And I'm not saying Boston's not one of them, and we'll tease it a little bit. We'll get there. But I didn't feel that everything was that big of a standout. We'll talk about it. And the cool thing is, with respect to pitching, I have probably 4, 5, maybe 9 pitchers I can use. I have a lot of options for as far as pitching goes. So maybe if it turns out that I can be talked into the fact that the Boston-Baltimore thing is unfadable in some way, although nothing's unfadable on a 15-game set, whatever. Right. I do have some pitching that I can pivot to.
Yeah, I hear you. There's definitely a ton of pitching options. It's for a giant slate. I didn't find as many obvious stacks that I wanted, but there are some that I really like. And I guess we'll talk about that with the first game here with Milwaukee-Pittsburgh, because I think that, we have some weather concerns in this game, but we've seen Pittsburgh just basically, they're just a dumpster fire right now. And Keller is not someone who particularly scares me. I like the Milwaukee side of this. Milwaukee, I believe, has the second highest run total on the slate. And I think that they're really interesting. I also think that they'll get some of the other ownership. I think you're going to see a lot of popularity on Narvaez and Yelich especially. But I think that this stack definitely makes sense, and you can get lower ownership than we've had in recent times on guys like Tellez down at the bottom of the order. You're not going to see the same ownership on Colton Wong we've been getting. You won't see the same ownership on Willy Adames that we've been getting at a really high price tag. But this is certainly one of the spots where I don't like any of the pitching, but I'm very open to the Milwaukee stack and then maybe some Pittsburgh value on the other side, depending on where Alford hits and Hoy Park standing out for me. How about for you in this game?
Yeah, I am with you with respect to the fact that I'm not getting any of the pitching here. I have Milwaukee as kind of a secondary option with respect to hitting. And you think about it though, in a 15-game slate, I mean, when I have that's a secondary option, that means that they're like a legitimate option. So if you're going to tell me though that they're going to be one of the higher owned ones, I will not end up playing too much of it, at least in the ones that I kind of hand built. But like you said, I mean, you can get Tellez down at kind of the bottom of the order. It won't be quite as low owned. I will also go in Lorenzo Cain and Colton Wong and Alvisel Garcia as the guys that kind of stand out for me from Milwaukee. I did have Milwaukee as a much better option on FanDuel for some reason. I guess just because of the price, I suppose.
Pricing, yeah.
So I just kind of throw it out there. And I haven't really been playing all that much FanDuel, but I did take a look today, just because. And I do have Milwaukee as one of the top options over there.
Yeah, and I think I should clarify. I don't think they're going to be crazy high owned. Anything nearing 20% on a this has slate is high owned, but that would just be Narvaez and Yelich that I could see getting up there. And I agree with you that it does make a lot more sense on FanDuel. But huge slate, some weather concerns, not a good hitter's park, so not like a must play here. But I definitely think Milwaukee is on my list of teams that I'm interested in. You guys can go to TrueDFS.com and check out exactly how I have my stacks rated right now. I'll be updating that throughout the day as I get more weather clarity and some pitching clarity in some certain spots, because we have a couple starting pitchers that I'm not 100% sure they're actually going to go that route. So,
okay, we'll talk about that too. And
yeah.
I like to say, I want to apologize in advance. It's likely that at some point I might have to pause or have Bobby pause for a minute, which is not ideal already, Spotty. But this is what it is. I'll give you a little heads up.
Just give me a heads up whenever you do. Yeah, sorry. Apologize for anything being a little spotty. Again, our plays and everything will be clear no matter what. But sometimes on these road, and this is sort of like the last week where we don't have football coming up. We have it coming up, but we don't have it quite yet. But it's going to be pretty much all systems go in about 10 days, where it won't be. I'll be at home with my normal plug-in internet and not have any of these issues. All right, let's talk Cincinnati, Philadelphia. I think that you have obviously one of the best options on the slate in Wheeler, not the ideal matchup against Cincinnati, but it's not as bad. They're not nearly as good away from home, even though Philly's still a good hitting park. The one thing that's interesting to me about this pitching is that no one's going to play Tyler Mahle. At least that's what I've got right now. And in terms of spending down, I think his upside is greater than those around him. And even his floor, we haven't really seen him have like other than that game against Minnesota where he kind of struggled. He's got as much strikeout upside as pretty much almost anybody on this slate. So I think Mahle is kind of interesting for large field GPPs, especially at no ownership. And I obviously like Wheeler, but I don't think it's a must on this slate with some other options beneath him that are cheaper in better matchups, even though he's technically the better pitcher. He does have he's tied for the highest K prop on the slate with the guy we're going to talk about later, who's going to be the chalk. And I like Wheeler. I just don't think that either of these guys are must plays. I do think that Mahle is a super interesting play at low ownership.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment of Wheeler. I think he's an option, but not a must play. I have just so many pitchers that I just didn't quite get to Mahle. But that doesn't mean that that he's not a good play. I just too many others. Mm-hmm. With respect to the hitting, I do have a little bit of interest in Philadelphia. Not as a priority or anything like that, but on both DraftKings and FanDuel, I have them as kind of just on the outside looking into the top options. So I'm going to take another look at that. And that's pretty much where I'm at. I would say, just to recap, Wheeler, an option, but not mandatory. Mahle, I'm going to look into a little bit more because Bobby said so. And I do have a little bit of interest in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm with you on the having some interest in Philly. You do have, I'm not going to probably get to it, so I didn't mention it, but Didi Gregorius and Brad Miller both stand out from a price perspective, especially on DK, actually on both sides, Brad Miller on FanDuel as well. But Philadelphia would get, with McCutchen back. I think this is, I don't think I'd be fully stacking them, but I definitely I'm open to some one-offs here, and those would be the guys I'd be using. But again, I think there's better spots to pick hitters from than this. All right, you want to start us off with Atlanta, Washington, because this is another potentially weather concern game for maybe a delay in the middle. We'll clear that up a little bit later. But obviously, I definitely have some interest in Morton. Probably not going to get to Josiah Gray, although we know it could go one way or another with him. How about you on this pitching, and then take us into the hitting?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that Morton is again one of my options. I have, again, 1, 2, 3, like 9 pitchers, and they're all really close. I mean, so I'm gonna have to take a good hard look at the ownership here. I think Morton is gonna get good owner. I think he's gonna get solid ownership for good reason, And I'm very interested to hear who you feel is going to be the most chalky of all these, because the way the way you were saying that you have one guy who's like the obvious chalk, and I have them kind of more close. So I'm interested to see which one.
I didn't have it as necessarily obvious chalk. Just
Okay.
I think he will be the chalk by the end of the day. It's going to be Robbie Ray. I'll just give it away right now.
Okay. Yeah, I have him as the highest owned, but not by a lot.
Yeah.
All right. So I do like Morton. I do not like Josiah Gray today. As a matter of fact, I actually do have some interest in Atlanta, if I can get to them, on DraftKings and Atlanta on FanDuel, because you can always get to wherever you want. So I do have some interest in the Atlanta side of things against Josiah Gray, and I also, like I said, I do have Charlie Morton in my very extensive pitcher player pool.
Yeah, it's excellent hitting weather, and Josiah Gray definitely has blow up in him. And I mean, look, I think he's a stud. I just think that you're going to see mixed results with a lot of these young guys. And Atlanta is the kind of team that you don't really want to mess around with. 1 through 8, I think this lineup is really strong with d'Arnaud back. So I can definitely get behind an Atlanta stack. It's not my favorite on the slate. Great hitting weather, though, as I mentioned, and Gray with the potential of the Nats bullpen trying to get that potential 10 to 15 run team, which I think is going to be key tonight. Atlanta definitely stands out as one of those possibilities, but they're not as high on my list. There's just some other teams I like a little bit better. So that's where I'm at with Atlanta. But I definitely think that, in terms of like one-offs, Freddie Freeman at 4.8 is just a kind of a ridiculous price on DraftKings. So that would be where I'd start it. And I don't think anyone else in Atlanta gets too much ownership.
Okay.
All right, Chicago, Miami. This is going to be the cheap pitching semi-chalk, I guess you'd call it. I think it might actually be pretty heavy chalk. Luzardo, Alzolay, they both have 5.5K prop, 6.7 and 7.6. Soft matchup for both with the Cubs, who are really, really, just have been awful. But I do think they'll be better against lefties. It is in Miami, so I don't know. I like these guys, but I like them fine on a smaller slate or with no options. It just feels like I want to reach for the ceiling on a slate like this. And I don't feel like either of these guys' ceiling, potentially Alzolay, may have the ceiling we want, but I don't know. I don't feel excited about it, but they both make sense from just a logic perspective. Where do you stand with these guys?
Yeah. So I have Alzolay is rated, just by projections and stuff, is probably the second best, point per dollar-ish type play. But like we say, just because a guy rates number 1 point per dollar or whatever, doesn't make him the best GPP option. And I'm kind of in agreement with you that when it comes down to it on a huge slate like this, you want to chase ceiling a little bit. And I couldn't have put it better. I mean, couldn't put it remotely as close. Alzolay probably a good safe. I mean, whenever you're against Miami, you're probably somewhat safe, right? Mm-hmm. So he's maybe a safe SP2, but if you want a higher upside guy, I think you can go elsewhere. But he's certainly going to project really well. In addition to that, he actually projects super well on FanDuel too. If you wanted to do that, it just seems as though every time I think of doing that, it just seems wrong to pay down for pitching at Atlanta on FanDuel.
I hear you.
Hitting, I have nothing.
Yeah, the only thing is that I'll just mention that like Duffy's minimum cost and is probably going to be batting second. Yeah, again, you want ceilings on these giant slates, so it's not the most exciting play in the world to play not a huge home run guy. The one guy I could see taking as a one-off would be Patrick Wisdom with the splits of the platoon split advantage. He has an immense amount of power where I don't think it really matters that he's in Miami. So I don't know if I'll actually get to him, but as a one-off, he would be the only guy I'd consider in this game. Maybe Lewis Brinson on the other side at minimum cost. That's pretty much it for me. All right. Let's talk Dodgers and Mets. If Urias was a little bit cheaper, I would definitely have some interest. I think this is a really good matchup for him. He's really good. It was his birthday yesterday, so maybe he drank a little too much. Being in New York, who knows? I'm trying to find a reason, that I literally don't even have him on my pitcher pool because there's so many good options. But I think he's definitely, in line to have a decent game. It just seems like if we're going to pay that price, there's guys with, I think, a little bit more upside. He does have a 6.5K prop. There's guys who are a little bit higher who are around him. And the Mets don't particularly scare me. So I'm open to Urias. How about you with these guys? I'm not going to play any McGill against the Dodgers. I just think that would be a really, really bad play with the way the Dodgers lineup is currently constructed.
Yeah, I'll start with the hitting. I agree with what you just said there. And with respect to the pitching, I also agree about not playing McGill against the Dodgers or pretty much anybody at this point. With respect to Urias, just full disclosure, I mentioned I had 9 pitchers, and he is the 9th. He's the one that just kind of snuck in there.
Sounds right. Yep.
So I think that from a numbers perspective, the way I kind of framed it is the same way that you kind of framed it from that he's probably a pretty good play, but probably nowhere near a top option. But I mean, if I get to him somehow, play him, if that helps. So I mean, if I get to him a little bit, and maybe some of my chalkier hitting situations, I mean, I really do think he's going to be incredibly low owned. If that makes a difference.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a ceiling type of game for potential here for him. I just personally like other guys a little bit better, and the Dodgers, that not that they baby him, he goes is 6-7 strong, but I think there's guys who are probably going to outscore him tonight. Although I do think he's definitely like you mentioned, probably 9th on the list, and I didn't have that as many pitchers on my list, but I don't have it. That's probably where I would have him as well. I do think the Dodgers deserve some interest on both sites. More so on FanDuel, Seager at 3K. I like Bellinger, and even down towards the bottom, he's swinging. His swing looks just so much better. He's sort of rounded back into form. Turner and Muncy are all interesting to me, but I don't think on this size of slate that I'm going to try and pick on McGill for them as a full stack. I just like some of those bats as one or two mans, particularly Seager and Muncy.
So what's the situation in Boston where all these guys are popping so hard? Tell me about the weather. Is the weather like that hot and stuff? Yeah. So it's supposed to be 87 and it's game time with 60% humidity. I think look, yesterday when we got here, it was like almost 100 with like 80% humidity. You have the Red Sox with an implied run total that's a run and a half higher than anybody else, and almost 2 full runs higher if you take away the Brewers in a game that we don't even know if they'll play. So I just think it's an obvious spot. You have Watkins and then a horrible bullpen behind him against a mean lineup that had a terrible day yesterday, coming off of their 20 runs, which is sort of the Sheets thing. You know what I mean? Like they scored 20 runs the day before, they come back, they score 1 run the next day. But I love the idea of stacking the Red Sox. I know that they're going to be popular. You can get it mixed. I don't think people are going to play like Hunter Renfroe on DraftKings very much because of this. Like there's just too many outfield guys to play. I do think JD Martinez, Devers, and Bogarts are my preferred options. We'll see if Verdugo cracks the lineup, but you can play Kiki Hernandez at second base. Less interested in Duran, but mild interest at his price, I guess. But the lower owned part is going to be the 6 through 9 of the Boston order, and I really like Boston in this spot. I think they have a really big day, so I'm getting exposure to them, whether it's a full stack or not, in almost all my lineups right now. What about the other side of this game?
Well, actually, that sort of leads me into my other interest in this game, and it's one of my prop bets of the day is Nick Pivetta to go over 5.5 strikeouts. I think that number's way too low. Pivetta has tremendous strikeout upside, as we know. Baltimore, like this guy's, he's been facing Tampa Bay and Toronto exclusively over his last 4 starts. So it's sort of, made him look a lot worse than he really is. He's got, he's got good strikeout stuff. It's obviously somewhat combustible, but I do think like if you're not going to, I think he's worth considering on both sides, but especially on DraftKings. He has a huge leash, can get you double-digit strikeouts. He's only 8K on DraftKings, 7.3 on FanDuel, and you have a Baltimore team that has, I believe, given up to starting pitchers has the 3rd most 10K plus strikeout games on the season. So I definitely have some interest in Pivetta here. But DJ Stewart, Austin Hayes, and Santander are all free. And so are some other guys like Franco. Pretty much the whole team is free except for Mullins, who's the best play. Mullins, Severino, and Mancini are the most expensive ones, but everybody else makes sense. I don't think I want to fully stack it. Boston's pen has been pretty decent since the break. But I do think that Santander, Hayes, and DJ Stewart all stand out as potentially really good value if you're not interested in Pivetta.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. According to what I have right now, I mean, Baltimore is just light years ahead of everybody with respect to just pure value. Now, again, whether they can achieve that value in a 15-game slate is something else. But you know, if the weather is very conducive to hitting in general, I mean, to me, these are the guys you kind of want to play, especially if you want to double pay up at pitching, for example.
Mhm.
So the guys that you mentioned, like you said, I mean, I would have used the term exactly the same. I mean, they're all free. I mean, Santander is like he's actually a really good hitter. Um,
Mhm.
and there's Mullins, like you said, and Mancini and all that stuff. So I know that the way I've been doing things with my optimizers and my numbers and stuff, I'm gonna end up having to force like less Baltimore than I'm gonna be getting.
Mhm.
Uh, but I mean, I would definitely respect the value that's there. Whether
Mhm.
it be either to take a one off or two off or something like, they're just way too cheap given the given their ability and given the weather also.
Yep.
So that's the only thing that I would add to that. And I do have Boston rated as a top 4 stack on both DraftKings and FanDuel, no matter how you measure it. So yeah, it wasn't as if I was teasing earlier saying that I don't like Boston. I really do. But I do like Baltimore a lot, and 2 other teams almost the same. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, this is obviously kind of a key game, and it's so funny. I didn't even consider Pavetta as a play, but if you're right, I mean, if you think that the K prop is worth an over, then maybe Pavetta itself is worth it. It was no.
Absolutely. And I think that, with Pavetta, he occasionally can struggle with control and he gives up tons of power. But he has got a leash. And, anybody with any good righty with a leash who's really good against righties against this Baltimore lineup there's a ceiling here. And I think that he's really interesting as sort of a contrarian off the board play. I mean, he's just a really, really, he has the strikeout upside. He has what we want. He's a high variance pitcher, but he has that leash. We've seen him even go out. Poor guy has gotten out there and he's had to face the Blue Jays like 5 times, I think, in his last 10 starts. You know what I mean? So his numbers, everybody's gonna say, oh, his hard hit rate is this. Oh, is this, but between Toronto and Tampa Bay and all the teams he's been facing, that it makes sense why he's struggled a little bit. And even still, he's dropped in a couple really nice games in there. I think this is the best matchup he's had in a while, and I think we've got a chance to get him at very, very, very low ownership. So I'm very interested in Pavetta as an off the board GPP play. But again, I agree about the Baltimore cheapies. Next game, Cleveland, Detroit. We finally, this is a weird one because I absolutely love Cleveland here. Part of it is pricing on DraftKings. I like them better on DraftKings because while we have value, we don't have a whole lot of value on the infield. And you also have it in the outfield with Miles Straw and Oscar Mercado. But I don't mind if I'm going to make a stack to include Owen Miller at second base, for example, in that stack. And you play, Rosario's in the mid tier at 4.2. I think you've got obviously Jose Ramirez, who will be the popular one here. I think he's going to be pretty chalky today. I expect third base to be split between he and Devers in most lineups. And I love this Cleveland as a full stack or as a complementary stack against Detroit. Alexander and that horrible bullpen. Alexander did a good job against them the last time they played. It was his first good start, but that means 5 innings. He's got a 2.5 K prop, and they just saw him. I think that there's a really good chance not only that Cleveland gets to him, but beats up on the bullpen quite a bit. So I'm a big fan of Cleveland today.
Yeah. So, and again, just as a matter of context, I mean, Bobby and I never talked about any of this stuff before, and there are 30 games on the, 30 teams to choose from pretty much today. And I mentioned I like, 4 of them. Cleveland's one of them. So Cleveland, I'm in full agreement with him. And all the guys that he mentioned, I like. I will throw in Miles Straw at 2,600 if you need it. I will throw in Reyes at 5,300. And they have them as a top stack on DraftKings and on FanDuel as well, one of the top options. So I do like that. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's excellent hitting weather in Detroit. And this is another bet that I'm going to add to my bets of the day. I think the over in this game is an incredible bet. I have no idea why Cleveland only has a 4.6 run total. Even Detroit at 4.4 feels a tiny bit low, but more the Cleveland side. I'd be very surprised if Cleveland doesn't score 5 or more runs tonight. And I think that there's a chance they double that. I literally love this spot for them here. So definitely my initial second favorite stack, all things being considered, pricing, positions, and then all that. All right, let's move over to Oakland, Texas. I have literally 0 in this game. The only thing that's maybe worth noting, I don't know, if he was a little bit cheaper, if he was Luzardo price range, or he's close to Alzaloy, I guess, but Cole Irvin, and we've just seen, how bad Texas is, especially against lefties. He just pitched, he had 20 against them last time out, and I'm not going to get to it, but I'm just throwing it out there. That would be the only thing I consider in this game. This game just really isn't for me.
Complete cross off for me. Next. I
love it. I love when we just fly through one. Minor, Flaherty, and KC. I don't mind if someone wants to take a chance on Flaherty here with KC going to the National League. I don't love it, but that would be a large field play for me. And then Mike Minor, feels like the worst lineup possible, is all righties, and I kind of was interested a little bit at first glance at St. Louis. He's 6.4. If you wanted to get off of Luzardo, like Minor at least has he has a leash, he has a ceiling, probably a little higher than Luzardo's. He can throw 100 plus pitches, which we don't really see as often from Luzardo, where he can get through 7 innings. I don't think I'm going to end up getting to anything here, but I just think that I could see, I wouldn't fault anybody for 1, playing St. Louis, and 2, playing Minor or Flaherty, but I'm just not doing it myself.
Yeah, I might. I like both these pitchers.
Okay.
I need to do obviously a little research with respect to how much leash Flaherty is going to have coming back off of the whatever he was on in injured list. But if you get any kind of sense that he's a full go, I mean, he's in my pool, and also Mike Minor, like you said, I mean, you got a guy who could put up 30 fantasy points and he's 6,400, not that he's necessarily going to, but you know what I mean? Like, but he's got a ceiling, and he's had some good games this year. So I certainly have him in my list. I actually, and as well, I do have some St. Louis along the lines of Philly and Milwaukee and maybe even Houston, which we'll get to. So yeah, I do have a little interest in both these pitchers.
Yeah, I think it definitely makes some sense. I'll do some digging into Flaherty and try and get an accurate pitch count before live later, but what we can expect from him. I think they in general have been careful with him, but otherwise, he would fit into the Pavetta category for me a little bit, with plenty of upside in the 5.5K prop if he's really going to be able to be a full go, like being willing to let him go up to 95 pitches if he's going well. I think that you can exceed that 5.5K prop as another interesting kind of bet there. All right, let's talk about Tampa Bay, Minnesota. Why don't you start it off? Because I am not going to play Shane Mcclanahan, and it feels wrong to me that I'm not. Well, maybe I'll change my mind by the end. This guy has been really good. He's got excellent K stuff against a Minnesota team that's got guys who have been good against lefties in the past, but there's definitely some spots in that lineup that are weak. They haven't been the same hitting wise this year, pretty much all the way through the lineup, as they're missing, their original lefty killers in Nelson Cruz, who's gone, and then Byron Buxton, who's injured. I think Mcclanahan is like the guy who I'm sort of wondering why I'm not paying a little more attention to at low ownership. So I guess I'd say if we, say Urias is 9th in the list, I guess he'd be the guy who's probably 8th for me, because I think I only have 7 pitchers listed right now. But I do think that there's some upside for him. And I would be happy to get to a Tampa stack against Pineda. More than a stack, though, I really like Brandon Lowe, Austin Meadows, Choi as one-offs. And then Nelson Cruz, you can obviously at 4.6, it's kind of a silly price for him. So, and even Rosarena you could throw in. So I guess it would make a fine stack for me. I have no problem if you want to stack this game. I have them a little further down my stack list, but they are definitely in the top 6. How about you?
But for me is in that group of 4 that I mentioned earlier. I like them a lot. alongside with both sides of the Baltimore-Boston game and Cleveland. Those are my core four, so to speak. And I didn't get to either the pitching just for no other reason. Like I said, that they're just a zillion others. And yeah, I could certainly see Mcclanahan, throwing a great game or throwing a lot of strikeouts without a great game or throwing a lot of strikeouts with a great game. So yeah, I certainly can make a case for it. I just have way too many pitchers. I'll have a headache if I use everybody.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so yeah, I like Tampa a lot, and kind of agree with you on most all of that.
Yeah, his last 9 starts, McClanahan's been below 6 strikeouts only twice, only had 6 once, and then all the other games are 7 or 8. And I think that's he's got a 6.5 K prop at 7,800. Seems like off just from that perspective, as good a play potentially as Alzolay at lower ownership. So just something to consider. All right, Houston and the Angels. This is another guy who I'm not playing that you're going to talk about the other side, I think, of this game. I will just say that you want to talk about guys who've got a ceiling. Patrick Sandoval has terrific stuff. I was just at the Dodger game where he was pitching. He has, and I mean, that was a tough matchup for him, obviously, but Houston's tough too. I'm not going to play him. He also has a 6.5 K prop though at 7,300. And I'm not going to play Greinke either against a really weak Angels team. He only has a 4.5 K prop. His strikeouts are just way down this year. But I'm not getting to the hitting because I have enough respect for both pitchers to not get there. I do think there's some value in Justin Upton, I guess, on the LA side. I think that Houston is always in play for a stack. I just don't think this is the right guy to do it against. But I don't mind if you want to take a shot on McCormick, especially at 2,300. Even Brantley at 32 again, a lefty is okay. For me, the pricing makes sense. I don't think picking on Patrick Sandoval is the way I want to treat a 15-game slate personally.
Yeah, I got, as I mentioned, I had Houston in kind of like the second tier of stacks, like just below St. Louis, Philly, like in Milwaukee or whatever. I don't think they're that great. And like you said, I mean, Sandoval, I mean, you just game log. Look, I mean, he's got freaking 40. He had 45 fantasy points three games ago, 13 freaking strikeouts. He had 9 strikeouts the game before that. I mean, the guy can bring it, So if I get to some Houston, great. I'm not going to force him in. And one of these days, I am going to play, by the way, Zach Greinke. And this is, I mean, it's just too big of a slate and too much. But I'll tell you, the Angels are not great.
Yeah, that's true.
A little bit better situation with respect to the rest of the slate. I might give Greinke a shot, but just pitching's just way too deep. So I'll probably get to some Houston without forcing it, and not that much of it. And I'm not going to get to either the pitching, but I'll tell you, if Sandoval, breaks the slate, I'll totally won't be surprised at all.
Right, and maybe worth noting is Sandoval, just a lefty, that great start that he had, the near no-hitter against Minnesota. That is who Mcclanahan is pitching against today. So maybe just keep that in mind for McClanahan's sake. And I agree about the Angels not being a big threat. If you do want to spend all the way up, I think that Ohtani is always a great play. And I think that goes pretty much without saying.
Right.
So, all right. Let's talk about this San Diego, Arizona spot, because I don't know what you're getting on projections right now. This is partly why I'm not on the other guys quite as much. I have no idea why Blake Snell, look, I'm the one who we've talked about all the up and down stuff. He has looked really good in most of his last outings. He had the one bad game against Oakland. Most of his last 4 outings, 3 of his last 4. I think this is the perfect matchup for him to go completely nuts. And if you need any proof, just look at the other day against the same team. He had 13 strikeouts, had 42 fantasy points. Now you could argue that facing the same team is worse, all that stuff. Sure. He's got a 7K prop, second highest on the slate, or tied. I guess there's 2 guys at 7.5. He's got the next highest. He's 8,400 on DraftKings, 9K on FanDuel. Like him a lot better on DraftKings than I do on FanDuel, but I love Blake Snell, and he will probably be in my main lineup. It's a toss up between him and a couple other guys, but I really like Blake Snell tonight. And at the same time, I love the San Diego offense. I wish it was not indoors. I wish it was open and they were letting the ball fly at 100 degrees in Arizona. but it's just not the way it is. But I still like the San Diego offense and Snell here.
Yeah, I mean, I projections look fine to me. I mean, he's a top 5 pitcher to me, and I would actually have him 4th, and it's, forget 4th. I mean, it's like so close between these guys. I certainly no problem playing him. I mean, honestly, what's not to like in his last couple of starts? He hasn't given up anything. He always has that walk issue that'll drive you freaking bananas, right? When it rears its ugly head at you. But he's got ceilings like this last game. I mean, that just happens. And look,
and you have nobody who walks
100 times in a.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Keep going.
I'm saying I don't, let him face Arizona 100 times in a row, unless Arizona's getting like Luis Gonzalez back somehow or something like that from like 2000. I mean, the Arizona's got no. I'm worried about however many times Arizona wants to go up against Blake Snell. They're terrible. So I definitely think Blake Snell's a really play, and he's if he gets too chalky somehow, he can certainly be a fade too. But I have no problems projection wise with him. And San Diego, I'm having trouble, I guess, because of price getting to on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, they're certainly standing out.
That's where I'm at too with San Diego. I do want to point out, I will acknowledge that Bumgarner has turned it around this year and pitched much better. But this is the worst bullpen in baseball that they have in Arizona. They're facing a lineup that has a bunch of guys who are really good against lefties. I mean, namely Will Myers is basically still in the league and still solid because he's really good against lefties historically. Manny Machado, Tommy Pham, Austin Nola, catcher, but you can use him, whatever. You could even use him on FanDuel. I don't mind mixing an Adam Frazier, who's cheap on FanDuel as well. Jake Marisnik, I probably won't get there because I don't think you want to be using guys batting 8th too often here. But if you're making a full stack on DK, I certainly think it's viable. So I'm a big fan of San Diego tonight. But at the same time, there's plenty of stacks that rate very similarly. So don't think you have to do it. You can go with it. Mad Bum's been good, but he is facing them back to back, and I expect them to get to him tonight. And then I expect them to certainly have the opportunity to feast on the bullpen. And partly why I like Snell, we mentioned his control issues at times, but if there's a team you want to have control issues against, it would probably be this Arizona team because there's not a lot of guys who walk much at all. And look at last time he somehow found a way to walk 3 of them and still put up 42 in 7 innings. So I'm a huge fan of Snell tonight. Anyway, just wanted to reiterate that one. All right, this is a weird one. Not going to be taking the hitters in this game at all in San Francisco. DeSclafani is, he missed a start. I guess he just missed 1 start. But I'm curious if they're going to let him go full go, because Colorado in San Francisco is basically, you're getting the worst offensive team away from Coors in the best pitcher's park. So I definitely have interest in DeSclafani. He's ahead of the other guys we talked about for me a little bit, but I'm worried, coming off the IL, exactly what they're going to do with him. They've got a nice bullpen behind him. So maybe he could even pitch 6 strong innings with 5 Ks or something, and that might not be good enough for this slate. So I'm sort of iffy on DeSclafani. Super long shot hero play would be the fact that I still believe that Gomber is really talented and is still kind of going in and out of figuring it out. But I think both pitchers are mildly interesting, is I guess the short way of putting it. How about for you?
I'm telling you, I'm like 3 for 3 forcing him. He has no chance. He's good, got a lot of talent, and I don't know if I can get there, force a couple in principle. Mm-hmm. He's 6,800, minor 6,600. You know what I mean? I think Gomber's, I don't want to even say in play, because like on this slate, he's probably not in play, but I think that he could put up a good game if that means anything. And like you said, I mean, I don't like guy having to go to the injured list up for shoulder fatigue. That seems pretty grim, if you want to know the truth.
Yeah, but that's what scared me too.
Like you said, I mean, there's one team to get right against. It's going to be Colorado away from Coors. So I have DeSclafani is if Urias was the 9th, I have DeSclafani as the 8th. As far as pitching goes, and if I get to some of him, I'll probably just take what I get. and I'll probably get to some Discalfani anyway.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Gomer just versus Luzardo straight up. It feels like playing Gomer might actually, have some benefit because he has a 5.5K prop. He's got great stuff. We can see it. He's got a 10 strikeout game in him pretty much anytime he goes out there, at least the possibility for it. So maybe we should have him a little higher. We're talking about ceilings. I think I might end up squeezing him in and forcing him into some lineups because I think he is actually more in play than even against a tough San Francisco team. It's not like they're righties you're terrified of outside of Chris Bryant. So I definitely think he's mildly interesting at the least. All right, you ready to move over to Toronto, Seattle for the finale? Let's talk a little bit about this because Robbie Ray is going to be really chalky, highest K prop on the slate. We've seen how good lefties can be against a really, really weak Seattle offense. And I think that he's in a great spot here to have a monster game. I'm not even going to take the other side and say, we should be looking to possibly stack against him. No, we shouldn't on this slate. He's been pretty consistent and good. His strikeouts are down a little bit, which is kind of concerning, but he faced Boston 3 out of his last 4 starts. You know what I mean? It's not like he's gotten this dream matchup. And the last time he got a really good matchup against Texas, he put up 32 fantasy points, and Seattle is the best matchup you can face basically for a lefty in Seattle, outside of maybe Texas. I think Ray is a great play tonight. And if you don't want to, maybe don't go crazy with it because Flexen has been solid, but there is going to be an unowned offense that has the most power of any, or as much power as any team on the slate with Toronto. They sort of fall into the Dodger category to me. Not the great hitters park, but I think that if you want to find a team you can stack and just play every day, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, this is the team. So that's where I'm at with this one.
Yeah, so I have Robbie Ray currently projected or whatever as the top option pitching wise but for me, it's not all by that much. So I'm going to have to be taking a look at ownership and seeing what I really want to do. And I'm not going to force in like Seattle leverage. There's just too many other ways to go. You know what I mean? Like you could win the slate if Robbie Ray busts without playing Seattle. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I don't need to play Seattle. I don't need to play Flexen. And I couldn't agree with you more, man. If you can get Toronto in, I mean, LFG, you know what I mean? Like, right. I'll play them on DraftKings. I'll play them on FanDuel. I mean, they look, it's like you said, it's not the greatest park in the world, but I mean, Vladimir Guerrero with a freaking 1,000-mile-per-hour exit velocity. I'm sure he'll find a way out of Seattle also if he gets a hold of one. I think that the Toronto is definitely, again, you're gonna have to do some funny business. Maybe you won't even have to do some funny business. Like I said, with all these Baltimore freebies, you know what I mean? All at like 2,500, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. You could probably, and as long as they stay that way for the next couple of weeks, maybe you were right when we spoke about this last week. Maybe DraftKings, it is even easier than FanDuel to get in who you want nowadays.
I think it is. I think that they've changed. Yeah. Keep going.
Sorry. Yeah. I mean, they leave all these outfielders under 3K who have, who are actually like not the worst players in baseball, Right. And they can actually hit a little bit. And then if you always have the opportunity to slide those guys into your lineups, it becomes somewhere wherever you want. So maybe you can get to Toronto. I mean, I didn't try, but maybe you can.
Yeah, I mean, you have DJ Stewart. Like looking at the Baltimore stuff, like you have DJ Stewart at 2K, the minimum cost. He's hit 3 home runs in the last 2 games in much, less power-friendly matchups than he's got today because of the way that the weather is in Boston and the fact that Pivetta gives up so much power. I really think that there's an argument to just use those guys as your value, and you've got some other value guys that are worth noting, but that's sort of how I've got it for now. All right, you want to do a quick sum up of sort of your favorites, and then I'll do mine, and we can get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, just to summarize again, pitching I think is very, very wide open. I think you could play a lot of guys. I think that this is where I would try to, to screw around a little bit. I would screw around. I would screw around ownership wise. I mean, I really want to. The good thing is, this is like probably the first time in like a week that I'm going to be around for lock. I've been putting my lineups like 6 hours ahead of time, pretty much, like 3 hours ahead of time. Doing pretty well, actually. Dude, let me tell you something. If Seager does anything with the bases loaded the other day, you don't even remember it, but if Seager does anything with the bases loaded the other day, I'd win that freaking 4max for sure.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's all right. And then even like the ninth, they had a chance to get up when what's his name, and if Pujols walks instead of strikes out after going 3-1, then I get another stab out of whoever was coming up next. Anyway, so I'm going to be there till lock. So I'm going to be able to get a real good tight ownership update. I'm going to really be a stickler for that today. And especially with the pitching, with the hitting, again, right now, Baltimore, Cleveland, Boston, Tampa are my top 4, with secondaries to be St. Louis, Philly, Houston, and Milwaukee. And if you can get Toronto in, terrific.
I love it. I've got my stacks are the Boston's significantly I've got ahead of everyone, unfortunately, and I might need to change that or at least get different in my other spots. I love the Indians. I like the Brewers, Padres, Dodgers, and Blue Jays. But mostly it's going to be Red Sox, Indians for me on DK. A little bit more of some Dodger 2-mans and stuff like that on FanDuel, and a Padre full stack on FanDuel probably. My pitchers are Ray is number 1, and I've got Wheeler, even though he's expensive. I think you can get him in. Wheeler, Snell, Morton, Alzolay, Luzardo are my first look at it. But I'm going to add to it a little bit of Pivetta, a little bit of McClanahan, just for the upside alone, and potentially try and take a shot on Gomber. Those are what I'm looking at doing right now.
Awesome.
All right.
See you what?
Yeah, we'll be there from 6 to 6:30. Hopefully my internet will be a little bit better, guys. Apologies for any hiccups we have, but great to be back, man. Great to be back doing a show with you, and let's crush it tonight and all through the weekend. And hopefully people's got golf lineups that don't have Charles Schwartzel, because he is destroying some beauties that I've got running right now. So good luck to everybody out there. All right, man. Good luck out.